The specifics of Atlantis as a geographical location have been variously placed at the Caribbean Sea, West Indies, the Atlantic Ocean, or even in the Mediterranean Sea. And that's an interesting subject on its own. And whether it's, I like to divide the history of the world into pre-flood and post-flood. There having been a great cosmic disaster way back in around about 2345 BC, and this interrupted history, and history had to start again. And whether the Atlantean culture that we speak of was an echo of the pre-flood world as a whole, or whether it was a localized spot since the flood, that's open to interesting research and debate. Oh yes, most certainly. And they've recorded that, not just in the biblical writings, but also in the history of China, for example. Around about 1500 BC, a Chinese emperor asked his scientists to investigate how it was that the longevity of the population had been dropping for several hundred years, and he considered it to be alarming. The longevity meaning not just a short, a small drop, but a drop which meant a lessening of the lifespan by hundreds of years per single person. Oh yes, I do believe so, and I can see why. There are many scientists, many evolutionary scientists now, who have abandoned evolution simply because they say, well, how can it possibly be reasonable to state that man was a brute force, a dumb, unintelligent brute for millions of years, or even hundreds of thousands of years. Now suddenly, just a few thousand years, he comes from nothing up to a high civilization. That doesn't make sense. And so in order to get around that problem, they still believing in evolution, but not knowing how it can explain, and this being a big problem for it, they then resort to extraterrestrials visiting Earth, interbreeding with ape-like creatures to produce modern man. And that's their explanation. That's how that began. But of course, that doesn't answer the question. All it does, it removes the origin of life and the origin of intelligence. If it can't evolve on this planet, then they've got to find some other source for it. But then they've got to face two problems: not just how it evolved on this planet, but how did it evolve on that other planet that brought it here.
Yeah, that's very true. I can't help but think of even conventional science when we talk about Cro-Magnon man, how he had a larger brain and might have even been smarter in certain ways, at least, than us.
Yes, Cro-Magnon man is one example, and we have a fact there that the human brain was larger, and by implication, man was able to do more back in those days. We have these various types of men named after locations where specimens have been found. We have Neanderthal man, which was thought to be a subhuman for many years, but has now since only been found to be a reject from a higher society based upon arthritic conditions, and you'll see such people driving buses and walking around towns today. It's not a normal man. It's not a new variety of creature. It's not a missing link. It's simply a variation of the human race through sickness. And Cro-Magnon man shows superiority, and that, of course, does show us not a new kind of creature, but simply an earlier kind of man that had not deteriorated so much.
Can you tell us more about this evidence of American cultures?
Evidence of American culture, yes, I'll be very pleased to. Why don't we talk about a discovery made in the United States in California? I have it direct from a person who was involved in it, and so we're not talking about some mythical hairy-fairy speculation. I had an email from a gentleman, and we corresponded for some time, and he wrote to me, and he said, I was part of an archaeology team from a college in California, and a man in Southern California had discovered a capstone of sorts underneath about 15 inches of soil on his property. And when he had uncovered the stone in its entirety, he realized that there was beneath it a hollow. and he was unable to lift it. So he called the college. They sent 4 other men, and plus the man who got in touch with me to check it out. He says, we got there, we came to the conclusion that it was indeed an ancient burial site. And so they got permission to lift the stone, check out the site, and they discovered the entrance to a man-made underground complex of 4 rooms with a total area of about 35 feet by 50 feet, with stone walls, drainage. Everything was well done, and inside of each room were metallic sheets, which turned out to be a variation of aluminum. Each of these sheets had diagrams of flying aircraft. They had detailed star charts, their designs for buildings, pictures of different kinds of medical surgery being performed, and they also found there what appeared to be clear plastic cubes. When you exposed these to the fire, they got icy cold, and when you placed them in ice water, they'd get very hot. Now, who can explain that? That's something we just don't know how to manufacture, nor do we know why this was used.
Were these crafts like Vimanas, sir?
I beg your pardon?
I said...
Yes, they were,
okay.
and they were definitely shown as flying. Oh, something else. One of the pictures even showed human beings walking among dinosaurs.
Wow.
Now, what happened after this, one of the team contacted the local police to ask if they would guard the site. But the very next day, 2 U.S. Army officers, a major and a captain, arrived with 8 Army troops and seized the land from the owner. And within days, the property was gutted, it was filled with fresh soil, and overnight someone broke into their excavation office that they'd just rigged up there and stole all the pictures and artifacts that they'd collected. And this man who wrote to me said to me, his name actually was Dr. William Gigantes, and he sent this as in an email to me on February the 8th, 2006. And he said these were his actual words. He said, when I challenged the Army officers about what they were doing, the Major looked at me and said, it would be a shame to have to kill you right here and now. Now,
that's blunt.
This man used the Freedom of Information Act then, and he got nowhere. He even gave the names of the Army officers. He was told there never were any officers with those particular names. How about that? That's in California.
And I'm in California.
Yeah.
Now, sir, what exactly would you say was your favorite discovery that you made, sir, when you made on one of your expeditions, sir?
Well, I can't make claim to having been the first to find too many things, but I do remember going down into the Amazon. This was my very first expedition in South America, and living with a tribe of people who, in my first visit into this tribe, I walked off the map, you might say. This was in eastern Ecuador, where the borders are very much imaginary because you don't know where you are when you're in the jungle. And there were tribes in there that had never seen a white man. And these tribes were fighting among themselves. There were about 10 tribes within the area of which I'm speaking. And in the 3 months prior to my visit, 100 of their number had been killed in payback warfare, where one person dies, so the village nearby, it becomes the target for revenge for one person dying in your village. And it doesn't matter who you kill as long as you kill somebody. And this just continues on like a chain of events. But these people actually did have, and these are living in a savage way of life now, and a life of fear. And they don't know what electricity is. They don't know what civilization is. They think that those 10 villages around them, that's the whole world as far as their knowledge was concerned, at least when I went in there. And anyway, they had in their possession these metal plates. They were like pages of information with pictures in them, color pictures in metal. And they said that they couldn't read them themselves, but they had picture and they had writing in them. And they said that they had been handed down from their ancestors many, 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 many years. And their ancestors lived in great big villages made of big, tall stones. So that's how they would describe them. They didn't know what a city was, but they have the legend of their ancestors living in this area, in that jungle area, in great stone cities, and the lights never go out at night, or they never used to go out at night. This is how the story came down from their ancestors. Now their descendants are living very, very primitive. An evolutionist might go in there and say, oh, they're just emerging from the Stone Age, or they're just emerging from living like apes. But that's not true. These people have not come up, they've come down, and they have a memory of what was. And these metal plates are interesting. And they also say that, they told me that they used to travel down with gold and silver to the mouth of the Amazon River to trade with big ships coming across the Eastern Ocean. And there was a village on the edge of the sea where they exchanged goods.
John,
so that's rather interesting. And perhaps that was my fascinating discovery because no one else had told me this. They told me that.
Hey guys, yeah, I'm tuning in for the first time. I'm always curious, like now with the amount of recording equipment that is out, why don't you see a lot more footage of really strange things, or even like when people go off the Amazon, why don't you really see a lot of video footage of that stuff now?
Oh, that's an interesting one. I can't give a reason for everybody, but I myself actually had taken two cameras. I took two cameras with me, a video camera plus a still camera. And as it turned out, I was running short of money by the time I managed to get all my costs were mounting up higher than I thought for the expedition. And I had to sell half of my equipment. And I think there are many others who don't expect to find anything that's sensational. They just go in for a good time or to explore, and they don't take a lot of stuff with them. I took stuff, and some of it was stolen, some of it was damaged, some of it just wouldn't work properly when I was in the jungle. And I guess that I did come out with footage. I came out with some movie footage, which I've got in one of my videos. But I can understand others who they go into an area, they don't expect to find something sensational, and then they think, oh, I wish I had my camera. In fact, I have been in areas where I've done the very same thing.
Oh, okay.
But you never get back because it's a remote area.
Yeah.
Oh, I think Egypt's a hard country hard to beat.
Right.
I mean,
no,
Egypt
I'm saying like we're online or wherever do you think like the most
where deterioration doesn't occur as readily as in areas with humidity, and things can last a little bit longer. But let's put it this way: there's not much that lasts a dead civilization. Suppose a disaster came across the United States, and God forbid that will ever happen. But suppose disaster came and all the cities were destroyed. The railway lines would melt eventually and blow in the dust. They're not melt; they would rust away and blow in as dust. The plastics would disappear for the same reason that nature's not very kind to plastics over a long time. Exposure to the sun, exposure to other forces. Concrete, cement would deteriorate. Now, most of the skyscrapers contain materials that would disintegrate. And the only surviving material, really, that you can count on surviving is stone, straight stone, rock. And you would go into the city centres and you'd find that nothing really had survived except now trees were growing up everywhere. And you'd go out into some of the suburbs and you might find a stone axe head or a stone something else. You wouldn't find any hair dryers, find no motor cars, no TV sets, no cameras. All of that would have deteriorated after 1,000 or 2,000 years.